Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Get Decked, the video series where I make budget Magic the Gathering decks for your casual games nights and to introduce friends and family members to the game. So in this video we're going to look at a deck type that I've actually not really built that much before in the past, so we'll see how it goes. I've called it True Blue because it is just a mono blue deck, and it is the bluest blue deck you could think of because it is essentially a budget blue control deck. So we'll see how that goes. It's not a deck I've tried to build before, so it was actually quite an interesting little experiment for me. But first, let's remind ourselves of the Get Deck rules. So these decks are 60 cards. They're designed for 1v1 games. We don't have any format restrictions. We build with mostly commons and uncommons or cards that cost less than $2 at time of recording. We limit ourselves to 12 non-land cards, basically 12 playsets of 3 for the ideal mix of consistency and variety. We go for sort of low to mid complexity, and just because it's casual doesn't mean it's weak or bad. So yeah, let's take a look at the deck list for True Blue. So we've got 15 creatures, 15 instants, 6 enchantment, 24 land, mana curve off to the side there. Let's dive into this my attempt at a budget mono blue control deck. So first, we got to say how we're winning. So, so in mono blue control, I guess we're just trying to grind out a long game and win with just a couple of swings from what we've got. So the options I've put here, I think, were the best I could go with in terms of, like budget blue control, and they just felt right to me. So we've got 2 Sphinx and Magosi, so 3 in triple blue for a 6/6 with flying, and you spend 2 in the blue to draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on it, which is quite nice. You do this the turn after you play it, use it twice, and then it's an 8/8. So hopefully you would only need to swing this a few times. We've got 2 Torrential Gear Hulks, so 4 and double blue for a 5/6 with flash. When it ends the battlefield, you can cast a instant card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost, and if that spell would be put to your graveyard, it gets exiled instead. So there's a lot of instants in the deck for Torrential Gear Hulk to work with, so I can anticipate like some really fun plays with this. And also, it's just a big 5/6 with flash anyway, so it's a lovely surprise blocker, or like you just drop it at the end of the opponent's turn, and yeah, you just got it ready for next turn. Both of these, like, you could bump them up to 3. There are definitely probably things you could trim down in the deck, but yeah, I'm just gone with 2 because that was what felt like the most mono blue control-y thing to me. Only have like a few copies of these cards, and just you just draw into it while you stall out until you get them, basically. And then we've got 3 control magics, so 2 in double blue. Its aura just goes on a creature, and you just control it. So rather than wait to draw Sphinx and Magosi or Torrential Gear Hulk, just use your opponent's best creature. Yeah, and like for 4 mana, this is absolutely crazy. Yeah, I mean, this again, if you can't get hold of control magic, because I think this particular printing of it was only shown up in a Commander product. You could easily use like Mind Control, or there's a bunch of other like blue auras that do exactly this, that let you control an enchanted creature. But yeah, that's the main win condition essentially, is these 2 big boys and then control magic to steal your opponent's best stuff. So what helps us win? So this is going to be all the card draw and stuff that helps support those win conditions. So we've got 4 Ether Channelers. So this is, I think, just like a really fantastic versatile creature, because it just gives it, it's just got a lot of different options with it. I think it's just great. So 2 in a blue for 2/1, and when it ends the battlefield, you choose one. You either make a bird token, you bounce a non-land permanent to owner's hand, or you draw a card. And it's just, I think those are just all like really good options. Just like a really solid card to include in here. Like it's just doing very solidly blue things, So yeah, I was actually surprised it was as cheap as it was, because it's just, it's like less than $1, and it just does a lot of stuff. I just really like it. We've got 4 Fairy Seers, 1 blue mana for 1/1 fly. When it ends the battlefield, scry 2. So potentially really nice, like turn 1 play. Just drop this and look at the top 2 cards of your deck and rearrange them however you want. So yeah, I think this is really nice to have 4 of these in there. And 3 Rain of Revelation. So I am aware, not the most ideal draw spell, but it all works with Torrential Gear Hulk, I suppose, that you can cast this from your graveyard and like it's draw 3 for like 4 mana at instant speed, which I thought was pretty good. There is a discard in there as well, but drawing 3, I think, at 4 mana at instant speed is pretty solid. But you could easily replace this with a draw spell of your choice. But I would definitely try and make it an instant draw spell, just so Torrential Gear Hulk can get it. So this is probably going to be the biggest bit of the video. What stops them winning? So we're playing mono blue control. So yeah, this is most of the deck, honestly. So let's get into that. So, just right off the bat, 4 counter spells. Like, we're not messing around on this one. I was debating like, oh, I could do like, like a more budget counter spell, like cancel or something, or neutralize. But I thought, no, we're playing like true blue. We're just gonna go with the OG, just normal double blue, just to say no to anything. So yeah, absolutely, just 4 counter spells. Then we've got 4 Blink of an Eye, so 1 in the blue with kicker, another 1 in the blue. You return non-land opponent to its owner's hand, and if it was kicked, you instead draw a card. So yeah, I thought just like a bit of, again, early bounce, because that's kind of what you want when you're playing mono blue and you don't have many creatures, is to essentially just keep stalling out until you draw your actual win condition. So I thought having this as a bit of cheap bounce would be good. Also, it's a way of dealing with like non-creature things, so like artifacts or enchantments that are giving you a bit of grief. You can at least bounce them back, and then hopefully you got counterspell to then deal with them when they try to get played again. And then 2 evacuations, which is a spell I absolutely love. 3 in double blue. To return all creatures back to owner's hand. So I always used to love casting this. If an opponent swings out with it into me, and then it's such a nice feeling to do evacuation when like someone's attacking you with a bunch of tokens or whatever. It's just fantastic. And there could be like some potentially really fun plays with this. If someone's doing that and then you flash in the Gear Hulk, and you get this effect, and then Gear Hulk goes back to hand, you replay Gear Hulk again. Yeah, so just like it's just like it's such an iconic blue card to me, so I had to include it. We've got 2 Mystic Confluence, so 3 in double blue. For an instant, you choose 3 of these. You can choose the same mode more than once, which I think is fantastic. Counter-strike spell unless it's control, pays 3. Return target creature to owner's hand, draw a card. Yeah, again, all those options are really good, because that's potentially what again, if you choose the same option more than once, that's essentially a hard counter, unless counter-target spell unless they pay 9. You return 3 creatures to hand, or you draw 3 cards. For 5 mana, I think it gives you so much like flexibility. Again, it's such a very iconic blue spell, like I had to include it. Then we've got 3 Fog Banks, 1 double, 1 in a blue for a 0/2 with Defender and Flying, and you just prevent all combat damage to be dealt to and dealt by it. So like really fantastic. Again, early game, play this, and it's just immune to combat damage, and it's just so frustrating to deal with. It can just absolutely wall anything that doesn't have like trample, essentially. Really fantastic. Again, to me, like such an iconic blue card, like had to include it. Also notice that a lot of these cards are coming from like the most recent Commander Legends, I believe that is. That set was really good to this deck. It really drove down the prices on a lot of these cards. And then finally 3 Stasis Fields. So it's 1 in blue for an aura, goes on a creature, and the enchanted creature has base power and toughness 0/2, has Defender, loses all other abilities. So it's essentially like a blue pacifism effect, really. I know it's not exactly pacifism. I'd say in some ways it's better, because it's then setting their base power and toughness to 0/2. It's making them lose all abilities. And I just thought this was like, I know typically these aren't well regarded, these kind of blue enchantments, but I was looking at this one, I just thought I really like this actually, and like again, that's kind of what the point of this series is. It's just these are cards that I like. Like all of these decks are like decks I would quite happily play and include cards that I like. So this is probably like the free slot, essentially, if you wanted to swap this out. But yeah, I really want to include this. I think it's really really good and goes along well with the whole mono blue control. And then we'll talk about the mana base very quickly. Very simple, basically 4 lonely sandbars, so you can cycle them out late game if you need to, or you can play it in the early game if you need the mana, I suppose. And then 20 islands. Again, you could spice this up and add in extra non-basics, I suppose. But yeah, this is it at its most simple. So let's talk about what stops us winning with this deck. So apart from our opponent getting very annoyed and maybe flipping the table and conceding because they're playing against mono blue control and being told they can't play the game, I guess the other things we got to look out for are like the standard things I suppose mono blue control has to worry about, and as in very like fast aggro decks which kind of overwhelm you before you kind of can get going, because that's the thing, apart from counterspell and a few other options, you've got very few ways of like permanently dealing with something. You've got no like actual like kill spells or anything, and also along those lines, like carnage tyrant creatures like this, which they can't be countered, and or they have hexproof, stuff like that. That's like a real big nightmare for a deck like this to deal with. So anything that's too fast or too big and stompy, like you can just kind of get overwhelmed, because like a whole big thing of playing blue control is having like a good understanding of like tempo and like knowing when to trade for stuff. So yeah, that these can easily kind of run us over, I suppose. Decks or cards like this. And also, like in a more practical terms, it's just going to be like a really long game. Honestly, I would not play this deck if you were expecting like a really quick game. Just because you're playing control anyway, so your win conditions are kind of limited. You probably will draw into them, but like it might take a while to get them and to cast them and to be able to use them properly and to like get control of the board. So it's just going to be a long game. So that's not necessarily something that's going to make it difficult to win. It's just something to be aware of. So I'd love to know what you think about this one. I say I've not really built mono blue control before in any way, despite the fact I really like blue. I've usually paired it up with another color or done something else with it rather than just this kind of pure control deck. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this, on my interpretation of like a budget mono blue control deck. Stick a comment below if you've got any thoughts or suggestions or like ways you would change this, like what you would do to it. I'd love to know what you think about this one. But I'll be back next time with another Get Decked video, so I hope you join me for that. But until then, thanks for watching and listening, and have a great day.